Hi, my name is Kathleen Ratel, and I am a staffer working at the Translation Bureau in Canada. I would like to thank Lourdes for her invitation to talk to you about our experience of remote simultaneous interpretation in Canada. I would like to state that I'm speaking today as a member of AIIC and a former member of the working group on remote interpreting at the Translation Bureau. I am not, however, speaking on behalf of the Translation Bureau. Also, I will be telling you about our experience at the Translation Bureau for those of us working on Parliament Hill, but I cannot speak for the private market where, as you know, conditions are completely different. You will most likely have heard about the numerous injuries suffered by interpreters in Canada. You may even have read the article published by the Hill Times on May 6th about the spike of injuries amongst Canadian interpreters. In that article, it was quoted, and correctly so, that there were as many incidents reported in April of 2020 as there had been for the whole year of 2019 and the first 3 months of 2020. All those incidents are reported in April are related to those virtual meetings happening on Parliament Hill. With regard to remote simultaneous interpretation, today I will be speaking mostly about video conferencing, but up until recently, interpreters were called upon to do audio remote interpreting and audio conferencing simultaneous interpreting as well. These services are rarely offered nowadays because phone lines in Canada do not lend themselves very well to simultaneous interpreting. Phone lines in Canada only transmit 4,000 hertz at most, whereas the ISO standards call for 15,000 hertz. In terms of dangers for those two modes, I have to say that the audio conferencing mode was by far the most dangerous one. And that is because the sound levels were so different. The sound in the room was great, and the sound coming from phone lines, not so great, as you can imagine. And the fact that those were uneven caused the problem. It was so difficult to hear the participants on the phones that interpreters would crank up their volume, and so would the technician in the room. And if that loud volume was then picked up by the speakers in the room, because there was a live microphone activated, this created major feedbacks, and those caused major injuries, including one injury where the interpreter had to be sent to the hospital. The audio remote interpreting mode was a lot less dangerous in a way. There hasn't been any major acoustic shock that I am aware of happening with that mode. However, there was a problem with quality because receiving only 4,000 hertz made it very difficult to offer quality services for interpreters who had to really strain their hearing to really hear correctly what was being said. And so there was a lot of exposure to toxic sound in that context because there was buzzing on the phone lines, clipping, there were people not on mute, several participants not on mute. So as you can imagine, it was a very difficult context to work in. I have to say that major acoustic shocks can happen anywhere, really. It's not just with remote. We had an incident on the Hill where a delegate put his earpiece next to a live microphone, and this created a major feedbacking, and again, an interpreter had to be sent to the hospital. But this was an in-person meeting, so acoustic shock can happen in any setting. The preserve ear will protect you against the most dangerous acoustic shocks, the ones that will send you to the hospital, but they will not protect you against every acoustic shock, so we always have to be careful. whether or not we have a preserved ear. Now, with regard to remote video remote interpreting, it was used sparingly before COVID. Sometimes witnesses would testify in front of a committee via Skype, for example. But as you can imagine, with the crisis, now everything is happening remotely. There are numerous parliamentary committees meeting remotely via Zoom. We work in a booth on Parliament Hill with a technician on site, one interpreter per booth, and the Zoom platform is being linked up to the interpreting console, and all participants are participating remotely. Participants, so members of Parliament, MPs, and witnesses, are strongly encouraged to use a headset with an integrated microphone and cabled internet connection. As we know, Wi-Fi is quite unreliable. Sound tests are being carried out before every meeting, and interpreters are asked for their feedback as to sound quality. It is at that time that suggestions can be made to participants about how to improve their sound quality. These tests are crucial. No major acoustic shock has been reported so far ever since the beginning of the virtual parliament. However, interpreters have been reporting headaches, earache, tinnitus, onset or worsening of symptoms, undue fatigue, hypersensitivity, trouble concentrating, and even trouble sleeping. Interpreters sometimes cannot work the following day. They are sometimes off work for a couple of days or a couple of weeks in certain cases, so they can recover from fatigue or from their injury. And that is despite the fact that booth time has been reduced from 6 hours to 4 hours. And even in some cases, I have to say that in most cases, actually, interpreters are only interpreting 2 to 3 hour sessions. And they are doing one a day, so 2 to 3 hours in the booth a day. And they are still reporting those symptoms. The major issue is toxic sound, so poor sound quality with background noise, echo, distortion, poor internet connection that makes the sound choppy, for example. And this is leading to fatigue, undue fatigue. Interpreting is already demanding, and working remotely adds to the cognitive load. If you add on top of that poor sound quality, then you end up with a significantly increased cognitive load. One of the main problems is that not all participants are using a headset with an integrated microphone. MPs were sent a headset, and it was slowly but surely, now they're using, most MPs are using the headset. That was not the case at the beginning, 8 weeks ago. Witnesses, however, are not sent a headset. And sometimes they are appearing, they have no equipment, or they have earbuds. And as we know, the earbuds with the inline microphone is not ideal, as the microphone is just too far away from the mouth and sometimes rubs against the shirt. And we have to constantly remind participants who are using those to hold the mic in front of their mouth so we can hear them clearly. But it is still preferable to having nothing. It is still preferable over the microphone in the laptop itself. The second problem that we are experiencing is that most participants are using Wi-Fi and not the cabled internet connection. They're used to using Wi-Fi. They think it works just fine, so they don't see why they should use cabled internet connection. But for us, it makes a big difference. It ensures that we have constant sound, a constant flow, and that, as you know, can make the difference between can and can't, symptomatic and asymptomatic, for example. So it's quite important. The third problem is the platform being used. So I cannot speak for the Zoom platform. I do not have the technical information. However, what I can say is that if the platform used is not ISO compliant, then chances are the sound is being undermined by the platform. Now, because of injuries, interpreters are being encouraged by management to interrupt service if the sound quality is not good. And at first, interpreters were only interrupting service if the sound was really catastrophic and they were really unable to work. However, with time, we have realized that even exposure to toxic sound can lead to injuries. And interpreters are being asked now to interrupt service if they think that working with this sound over a 2-hour period could lead to injuries. It is still very hard for interpreters to interrupt service because they feel the pressure to continue offering the service. But we are doing a lot of education work in that regard. We are also doing a lot of education work with our clients. We are explaining to them why we are asking them to use special equipment, specific equipment, and why also we need better sound quality. So we explain to them that by using a proper headset, they reduce the risk of us being injured. It's a health and safety issue for us. And for the better sound quality, we have to explain to them that unlike regular delegates, we need a better sound quality. That's what we hear often, right? That delegates will say, well, I can hear just fine. What is the issue? The issue is that we are multitasking. We are also speaking on top of the main speaker, and we just can't afford to miss a beat. So interpreters and management have been working hard on educating clients. They've been at it for 8 weeks now, and it seems to be paying off, but still a lot of work remains to be done, especially with regard to the sound coming from witnesses. Now, for the takeaways. Working with subpar sound quality can be dangerous for your health over time, not just catastrophic sound, but toxic sound. Also, it seems that there could be a cumulative effect to being exposed to toxic sound. There have been no research on this yet, but this is what interpreters are reporting. Second takeaway, educate, educate, educate. Interpreters and clients alike. With remote, we are forced to learn a new skill, distinguishing between good sound and bad sound. So know how to tell them apart. Know how to explain it to your client. Third takeaway, sound tests are crucial. This should be done before every meeting with all participants that will be taking part in the meeting, ideally. Also, it's important to rest your ears as an interpreter on a normal day, but with remote interpreting, it's even more important. And longer remote assignments should be avoided. So this is it for me. I would like to thank Lourdes again for the invitation. I hope this has been useful, and I thank you for your attention.